everyone, and welcome back to the Mid.Life.Artist Podcast. It is week 3. I'm so excited of how this journey has gone so far. Our guest this week is Jenn Gray, who has really created this unique space within the Jiujitsu community called Her Haven Sanctuary and Resilient Roots. She's also written a book detailing her process, how she kind of got to where she is and why. And so, full disclosure, she does talk about some pretty heavy topics in her life, including unaliving ideation and sexual assault. And I'm saying it that way for the YouTube's rules and regulations. So there's some deep stuff there. There's also talk of drug use and abuse. And so I just want to make you guys aware of that. But the way she's really been able to reclaim her life. It's a joyous story. It's a powerful story. It's a graceful story. So I hope if you've got the space and are able to listen, that you will give it a listen. And without further ado, here is Jenn Gray. And we are here. Hi, everyone. It's me, Brandy, again. I'm getting better at these intros because I'm beginning to care less and less. And I am here with Jenn Gray, who I met forever ago. She was in a relationship with somebody I had known that I knew separately. And we got, as it is, like you become Facebook friends with people, I think. Was it Facebook? I don't even know if Instagram was invented.
I think it was Facebook first. Yeah.
So Facebook, and then you start seeing each other's posts and you're like, oh, well, she's cool. I like her. And they say something funny. And then we have developed an online friendship. Welcome, Jenn. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Thank you, Brandy. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is What the Actual Jenn with 2 N's. I also have a website with all my things on it in my bio and my link tree there. So everything I offer is in that link.
And just to give everybody kind of an idea of what we're going to be talking about today, Jenn has done a lot with movement, jiu-jitsu, yoga, and she's really kind of creating her personal brand of movement, which we will be talking more about, and is also writing a book.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about both those processes. So, Jenn, in whatever amount of detail you would like to discuss with us, kind of talk about, like, take us back to where you were when you got into jiu-jitsu, because that was really kind of the start of movement for you, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I started training almost 17 years ago. It'll be 17 years in November. I was 25 years old, and I had gone through some very traumatic events. And I was at my lowest point. At that point in my life, I was fading away. It was any day now is what it felt like, that I was going to go to sleep and not wake up, because that's how many drugs I was doing.
So on purpose, on purpose. That was it wasn't just the feeling of like, we were doing something to facilitate.
Yes. Yes. We were doing something to numb. Right. So I was numbing a lot of my emotions. And I was in that cycle for about 4 years. And so I was also dealing with an eating disorder. I was very frail. I was not healthy. I was smoking cigarettes. And I was invited to a jiu-jitsu class. And so I went, and after class, I sat in my car and I just started crying, like bawling my eyes out. And back then I didn't know why. But looking back, it was because, well, one, it was the first time I felt joy in many, many years. And it brought me back to my childhood when I would like roller skate, or when I was cheerleading or doing gymnastics. And but what all of that has in common is the movement. And what jiu-jitsu does is it grounds you and it brings you into the present moment. And so I was not grounded in my body.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when I sat in my car, I started to feel, I
Yeah.
felt something. And so I kept coming back, and that was the feeling that I kept chasing, I think,
Mhm.
but unconsciously. Like I kept coming back. I'm like, I don't know why. I'm the smallest person in the room. I'm the weakest person in the room. And I got smashed and beat up for the first 2 years of my career. I was 106 pounds when I started
Oh.
jujitsu. Like I was very, very tiny. Um, but that was the catalyst to me starting my healing journey, because it got to a point to where I was like, well, I'm not going to drink as much, so I can go to jiu-jitsu tomorrow. And so I started like tapering it down, and it took me years to get sober. Took me a while. I didn't go to rehab or anything like that. But that was also the, you know, the reason I became a jiu-jitsu instructor and I fell in love with it was because it did so much for me, not just physically, emotionally. And so, yeah, that was almost 17 years ago. And then I became an instructor because I wanted to reach women, because I felt like, women need to know this. And back then there were maybe a handful of women training in the whole state. And so, and I was usually the only woman in the room
Yeah.
most days.
Not surprising.
Yeah. So it was a rough go, but there was something inside of me that was just like I just kept showing up. And so that's why I became a teacher, was because I wanted to share this with women, because I do believe that jujitsu is more than just techniques, and we'll be talking a lot about movement,
Yeah.
but that movement is it's a tool that we can use. And so 17 years later, here I am, and I have a school, and kind of doing my own thing, but yeah, that's how I
So,
got started.
I mean, speaking of, there's hardly any women doing it. I mean, jujitsu is fairly niche now, and it really would have been niche then, and especially for women. I kind of wonder, like, was this just a like, F it, yeah, I don't have anything else to do on a Wednesday night for the invite? Like why? Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I left that part out, but not on purpose. I started dating a guy that invited me to
Okay.
a class.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
he had a school, and so I went and tried it out, really just to hang out with him. That's the only reason
Okay.
I went. I actually didn't know anything about martial arts. I'd never trained martial arts ever in my life. I've never even watched a martial art movie. Like, I didn't even know who Bruce Lee was. So,
Oh wow.
I know. Like, I knew nothing. But I really just went to hang out. And then it ended up, changing my entire
The
life.
course of your life.
Yeah.
I wonder, because you had spent so long trying to numb out and purposely, unpurposely make it to where you were not going to be here anymore. What was there something that happened in that class that made it feel safe for you to feel those emotions? Is it just that they took you over? And I think about you crying in the car after spending years doing your damnedest, probably not to have an emotion at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if you can think back and wonder if there was something in the class that had helped you.
That's a really good question. I don't think it was anything necessarily that made me feel safe enough, because back then the environment was very only the strong survive, and so
It's probably very bro.
it was, yes.
It was very bro.
Yes, only the strong survive. And I know a lot of people back then did not think that I was going to make it probably past the first day. Um, but it was rough. And no one showed mercy whatsoever when they trained with me. And so I don't I don't think it had anything to do with the environment. I think it had everything to do with what jujitsu is. And it in the beginning, it can seem very chaotic because you don't know what you're doing. But when you're on the mat and you start training, and you can ask probably almost any person that's ever tried a jujitsu class. When you're on the mat, you aren't thinking about anything else because you can't.
Right.
Somebody's trying to strangle you or break your arms and your legs, or you're drilling, learning how to murder someone or break their arms and legs.
Casual.
Yeah, and it's like it's not normal. It's not a normal thing that we do in life, like being that close to someone or touching someone's face. Actually, now that I think about it, they did do a study about jujitsu, and they compared it to cuddling. So when we cuddle, our brains are producing the same, or the chemicals, or when we're doing jujitsu, our brains are producing the same chemicals as if we were cuddling someone. So like
So it's like murder cuddling.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's like I'm releasing, like I have to get out of this or I'm gonna die, but at the same time I'm super happy about it.
Yeah, exactly. The endorphins are going. Yeah. So yeah. So I never thought about that because nobody's ever asked me that. That's such a great question. Because I was so disconnected from myself and from other people. I was very alone. And, now that I think about it, maybe that's what it was. Maybe I felt not just connected to myself, but connected to others in that way, even though they were trying to murder me. Yes.
It was just a very polite murder cuddle.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go through a 17-year process. You are now how many stripe black belt?
I'm a second degree.
Second degree black belt.
Yeah.
You've opened your own studio / gym. It's fairly 1 to 2 years. Are we onto the 2-year mark yet?
Actually, tomorrow will be my 1-year anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what prompted the idea? Was it just a natural progression? It felt like this is just the time to do this, and as the natural progression in your journey, do you talk about what the motivation was to open your own studio?
It was not a natural. Well, actually, no, maybe it was. It was, I think, divinely orchestrated in a way. So
I love it. I'm all about when the universe hands you some cockamamie idea and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this.
Yeah. So I guess you could say that. The studio that I started with, I ended up staying there for 13 years. I became the co-owner. And then about 4.5 years ago, I decided to leave. And so in doing that, I'm into the great big world of jiu-jitsu. And the great big world of jiu-jitsu is mostly competition. And competition is the complete opposite of what I have my background. So I did start out competition, but then there was a switch, and we ended up switching to more of a energy preservation, survival mindset, which is complete opposite of competition. Now, there's a time and place for both. So I'm small. I'm a woman.
Yep.
And this is what I believe in. This is why I became a teacher. Not to teach women how to go out there and just dominate people.
Right.
To me, self-defense is not about attacking. It's about surviving.
Right.
And women can't survive against somebody bigger, stronger than we are.
Yes.
By using our strength and fighting at the same energy levels. So that's why I have been practicing energy preservation. And so when I went out into the competition world, it was kind of I don't know, a bit of a shock, I guess. I don't know what I was expecting, but it it was almost like they didn't understand my style of jujitsu. They're like, like, why is she just laying there? Like, why isn't she moving? Like, why isn't she doing anything? Because I have been practicing many, many years to be comfortable on the bottom of the fight. Like, I want to be
Oh, wow.
comfortable,
Yeah.
and I want to be comfortable in the most uncomfortable positions. And the most terrifying positions we can be in is on the ground on our backs. And so I'm just very comfortable being on the bottom. And I like to preserve my energy because that's what I'm training. And as we get older, we can't rely on our strength. So there was a little bit of a misunderstanding and a misinterpreting what I was doing. There were comments made just that, oh, that wouldn't work, or, like it clashed. And so there was that. And just a lot of those environments, they're very competitive. Mm-hmm. And so they're not just competing with, other people, they're competing with their teammates. And for me, that's very hard. And so because I was a black belt and because I was a female, I did encounter a lot of people wanting to beat me. And I was not used to that. I was used to, being more cooperative in a training environment. Now I go hard, there's a time and a place, but and then I just, I kind of hopped around a little bit, and there were some training styles that weren't sustainable for me at my age. And I want to do jiu-jitsu forever, and I don't want to have injuries.
Right.
And then I fell into kind of a toxic environment. Towards the end, it was like, where we couldn't drink water, while we were training.
Wow.
And just, they were hurting each other, and it was kind of accepted. If you hurt someone, it's like, that's just the name of the game. That's how it is. But anyways, so going through all that, I'm like, I don't fit in here in these environments. And this is all I know. I didn't go to college. I don't have any degrees. It's my passion. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go back to my roots and start all over again, and start my own gym and create my own space. Because if that was kind of my last option at that point, because if I didn't, I would quit. Like I wouldn't, I wouldn't keep I wouldn't keep putting myself in those environments. And so, it was, just one day I was like, I should, go back to my roots and open up a certified training center again, because I already knew how to do it. And so I did, and I went that route, and I opened up a certified Gracie training center. But it ended up being way too much workload for one person. But again, everything to me, when something falls apart, I just feel like it's like a redirection, like they're constantly aligning. And that gave me the structure to get started. And then when it wasn't aligning with me anymore, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to create something that is sustainable for me. So that's where Resilient Roots was built.
I really want to touch on, and I'm totally getting into my own lens and perception here, but as somebody who has always felt on the outside, you talking about not fitting in, and I know you well enough and have seen enough of your posts to know that that is something that you've dealt with as well, of not fitting in, and then and manifested. You've made your own sort of movement space. This is something that I haven't seen before. I just could wonder if you could talk a little bit about your journey and how you've dealt with not feeling like you didn't fit in, how it feels maybe now versus other times in your life, how you address it now versus other times in your life. I would really love to know more about that.
So I Yeah, I've kind of always felt like that my whole life. Um, but once I found out that I was neurodivergent, it all made sense. When I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was like, oh, okay, my life makes sense now. I was the weird kid, but I, you know, it used to really, really affect me. Being, in groups of people and, not being included in the inside jokes or being invited to the things outside of, the gym. Um, it used to really affect me. But I've kind of my whole life, I've spent a lot of time alone. Even as a kid, I've always been, that's kind of been my little hidey hole. So I would just go into my little hidey hole, and I've spent a lot of time alone. Um, but now, um, I think over just probably this past year, I really started to um, see it as more of a I don't want to say superpower. It's not a superpower to be different. I do see it as I don't know what word I'm looking for. I
It's
don't
like
know.
a
I'm embracing
positive,
it. Huh?
just a positive,
A
something.
positive, yeah.
Yeah.
But I started to embrace being different, and I started to embrace not fitting in. And by doing that, I'm also starting to realize how important that is for people to do. Because what we're seeing, like even in the jujitsu community, is the same things over and over and over and over and over. And so I've kind of looked at myself as an outlier, and I'm here to make changes, and I'm here to make changes in the jiu-jitsu community. And so I'm kind of seeing, me being different is almost like it's like a fun adventure, because I'm like, well, I don't like doing that. I like doing this. So I'm going to go and I'm
Yeah.
going to try this, and this is something new. And I feel like my life is so, like fun and adventurous, and I don't stick inside these boxes. And I think when I felt like the odd duck, I was in a box because I was trying to be like everybody else to fit
Yeah.
in. But the
Yeah.
more I did
Yep.
that, the less I fit in, and the more detrimental it was on my mental health, because
Yeah.
of that, because I wasn't expressing myself or finding my own joy in the world. And so now I see being different and not fitting in as a way to, um, create my own space and find other people like you. And, the community that I've created now, it's like I'm attracting people that are like me. And that's because I jumped out of that box and decided, you know what, I'm just going to be me. I'm gonna shave my head, you know, and
I love. I hope. I just hope whenever this goes out into the world that is something that a whole lot of people get to hear, because it's very meaningful to me, and to hear you just talk about it as an adventure and enjoy and use those words, when I also have a history and can get triggered on the idea of being excluded or not fitting in, is just really meaningful and powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
Which brings us to Her Haven, which
yeah.
I will be getting up to if it kills me sometime in the next few months. I
Yes.
want to experience Her Haven. Please talk about how this came about, where the idea came from, what your vision is for Her Haven, what your experience has been so far with Her Haven. Please tell me all about it.
um, I I would love, love, love to have you there. So, I just love that you love it so much. That makes me happy. Her Haven. So after I went with the Gracie University, and it was very structured. You had to teach so many classes. You have to teach their curriculum. Can't go out of the box. You're in this box. And so once I stepped out of that box, I was like, I had this freedom, and I was like, I can do whatever I want now. And so for many years, probably a decade, I've had this idea in the back of my mind. And I wanted to create a day for women. And in the beginning, it was kind of like Her Haven is now, but more like jujitsu and like booths and things like that, and just women coming together and like selling things and just like creating a community. And so that's kind of where it started in the back of my mind, but it was just this day for women. And so when I tapped into that freedom, I was like, it's time. It's time. Let's put this together. And so as I'm creating this as, the person that I am today, I was like, I want to make it impactful, and I want to incorporate, jujitsu and inspiring women, and also tools for women to use to step into their power and reclaim themselves. Because, whether you fit in or you don't fit in, we've been told to be a certain way our entire lives. We've been conditioned to act a certain way, or be quiet, be nice, and if you're too loud, you're too much, or if you're too quiet, you're not enough. And it's like, I want to create a space where women can come together and feel safe and feel heard and start to become the person that they want to be, the person who they know that they are. Because I know for me, I've always known who I am on the inside. It's that inner child. I was always goofy and a little, like out there, and I dimmed it, and I dimmed it, and I dimmed it, because I was told it's too much, be quiet, be quiet. And so that's really the core of Her Haven is I want to bring women together and like just set fire to all those self-limiting beliefs. And I just want to see women like glow and just, reclaim themselves, because that's really what it's all about, is reclamation. And that's where Her Haven was birthed. And so far, it's been more magical than I even expected.
I have so much I like FOMO. I just can't wait to I just cannot wait to get up there.
Yeah.
For anybody listening that doesn't know, Jen and I live probably like 3 hours away from each other.
Yeah.
We're in the same state.
Yeah. Close. This is the closest we ever lived together.
Yes.
To
Yes.
each other. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We're getting closer.
Yes, closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
Now, because like my husband's not going to leave the farm, so if you can just decide to relocate to the middle of nowhere, that would be great.
There you go. We could have a Her Haven on the farm.
There you go. Yeah. Yes. One of the things that you've been doing with movement is, and forgive me, I don't have it brought up, but you're this intentional. So actually, let me back up a second. You are also a yoga from a yogi from way back, very long-standing yoga practice. But what I've seen is it seems like you're kind of mixing yoga and jujitsu into kind of intentional movement. That looks really interesting to me, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I've been doing yoga for almost as long as I've been doing jujitsu. I started yoga about 2 years after I started training jujitsu. Jujitsu and yoga are they are very similar in the movements, so natural body movements. So jujitsu is timing, leverage, natural body movements, as is yoga. It's timing, it's leverage, it's natural body movements, and they're both arts. That's what a lot of people don't talk about when they mention jujitsu, is that it's an art. It's usually like competition or UFC or killing people, or you know what I mean, breaking people's arms and choking them unconscious. But it's an art form, and to me, it's also an expression. And so with jujitsu, some days it can be flowy and expressive, and some days it can be very sharp and precise.
Yes. Yep.
And so you kind of get to choose, and it depends on the situation. It depends on your mood that day or your body. How is your body feeling? And yoga is kind of the same way too.
Yeah.
Some days we are, doing a forearm balance, and some days we were like, I'm just going to sit in child's pose all day.
Yep.
But as far as like the movement in yoga and jujitsu, like I said, it's very similar. And so I started to not really incorporate them together. But when I do yoga, well, I guess I am incorporating it together. Sorry. When I do yoga, I am combining it with the mobility drills that we do in Jiu-Jitsu because they're both similar. And so everything in Jiu-Jitsu is connected. In the beginning, it's very connect the dots. 1, 2, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the more you do it, the more it flows, and there's no stopping, and just one technique leads to the other technique, and it's a never-ending movement. So is yoga, not in the beginning, but at that, at the higher levels, it starts to flow. So, combining the like the solo drills and the from jujitsu and yoga together, and the like primal movements. I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff, but like primal movements, animal movements.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's, there's monkeys and scorpions and cheetahs and what else do we do? Frogs and turtles and all of that, the animals. And so I just kind of started combining it all to where it's starting to, just flow in a continuous movement. And like I said before, that to me it's an art. It's an expression.
I mean, you're creating a dance in a way.
Yeah, it is. It is a dance. It's definitely a dance, like choreography. A lot of times in my classes, I do what's called reflex development, and I will choreograph a fight, basically. So I'm like, you're going to do this technique, it goes to this one, and it all kind of flows together. It's a flow chain. And so then I dedicated one class to just flow chains, where it's just this one flows to this one, and it's like a continuous flow. So it is very similar to dance as well.
I mean, there's just something that my body responds to so strongly when you say a flow chain, of just like being able to get into, like, because I feel like when you do that, do you find it easier to get into a mental flow that way?
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely, I would say, a meditation at that point. Now, in the beginning, it's more you're thinking, you're like, what's next? They're doing this, and how do I do this? Or you get somewhere and you're like, you freeze and you're like, I don't know what to do now, because you're limited. But the more you practice, and the higher in rank you get, the more it starts to flow, right? And then when you can start to flow, I guess you could compare it also to like the flow state. You're going with the flow, you're there and you're centered. And for me, at my level, because I've been doing it for so much,
almost
so
20
long.
years.
When I slap and I bump someone's hand and we get ready to roll, it's like I'm tapping into that flow. It's almost like I don't know, like it has its own source. It's a meditative source, and I can just go with the flow, I guess.
I think a lot of people will be very envious to hear that. I know I am, because that's certainly, and it's not that I I think you will resonate with it. I have a very loud, busy, active brain. And I have certainly had times in my life where it's been very hard to turn off. But when you get into those flow moments, you want to always be in the like.
You
It's
never
just
want to stop. You
no,
want to
no,
stay
you
there
never want to
forever.
get out of a flow moment. And so, yeah, I love hearing about that, and I cannot wait to experience it myself. I will. Um, but I do want to switch gears for a second,
Okay.
and talk about the book. As
Okay.
much as you would like to share, you are writing a book. It's called Black Belts and Stilettos. Um, Black Belt and Stilettos, sorry, not black belts. And you are talking about your personal experience. Um, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, what was the motivation for
The
writing the
book.
book? Yeah.
So Black Belt and Stilettos. One of the reasons why I wanted to write this book was because I wanted to take back my narrative. Because my narrative, it got stolen from me. And it got stolen from me, and it also, my story was weaponized. And when I was 25, and I got into jiu-jitsu, and I said I was fading out. I was done. I was done with life. It was because when I was 21, I was groomed into the strip club by my boyfriend at the time, and I uh, started dancing. And then about a year later, I started modeling. Nothing like, it was just like local stuff. Like all the dancers were, modeling. And so, of course, there would be photographers come in there and be like, "Oh, let me shoot you." So there, then I got introduced to a website called Model Mayhem, and it was a website where you upload your photos, and photographers can book you for shoots and things like that. And so I was propositioned for the adult film industry, and this man was like, you can be the next Jenna Jameson, you can make millions of dollars. And when I saw it, I just kind of laughed at it. I was actually a little flattered, to be honest, because like back then, at that point in my life, my value and my worth was how I looked on the outside. Yeah, that's all I had. And that's how I made my money, and that's how I got my attention. Because going from, eating my lunch in the stall at school, and then being outcasted and bullied all my life. And, here I am on this center stage, and I'm getting all this attention and money. And it was definitely a different way of living. And so anyways, because of that, I went to my boyfriend and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're never going to guess like what this guy said." And so then my boyfriend was like, he was like, "It would be really hot if you did that." And, then he went into talking about how much money I could make. And long story short, I ended up agreeing to do it. And he was also, very persuasive and getting me, to dance, and eventually ended up stealing my money. And it was a really horrible relationship.
Yep.
So I agreed to do it, and what I agreed to was to only work with women. And so I flew to Miami, and they put me up in a hotel, and I was supposed to be there for 2 days, and they were going to fly me to California for 3 weeks, and I was supposed to make like 30 grand. Yeah. And so, yeah, yeah, I'm 22 years old.
10 grand a week is not a bad.
Yeah. I was selling stamp machines before I auditioned.
Especially at that age. That's a lot of money.
And I couldn't hold a job back then. Anyway, so ADHD, I'm like, I just But so I go to Miami. No one knows where I'm at except for one person. And anyways, the next day I get picked up by a man in a cab. And at first I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, he's just taking me to the shoot. And I get into the cab and he puts his arm around me and he propositions me for a sex act. And at that moment, I was very caught off guard, one. But then I was scared because I'm alone. I had been assaulted twice. Once when I was 19, and again when I was 20, so kind of back to back. So it started to trigger me. I just told him, it's my first time, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, oh, okay. And he backed off. And so then we're driving and he tells the cab driver, me and her, we're going to go make adult films together. And that was news to me.
That was your understanding.
And, I teach this in my women's seminars, and a lot of sexual assaults go unreported because of this. When women are isolated with men, a lot of times they will comply with them just to get out of the situation, because it's dangerous. If you fight back or say no, they could, murder you. It happens all the time. And so I, back then I didn't have a sense of self. I didn't have any people skills. I lacked confidence. And at this point, I'm starting to dissociate. And so we get to the hotel and he basically, it was just me and him, and that was it. And he told me, he basically started telling me what to do. So I did everything that he asked of me. He knew that I was uncomfortable. He knew that I was scared. There were times when I started crying, and he's filming, and we would stop and I would go to the bathroom and then I would come back out. And a lot of people don't understand this because of editing. They didn't see that. They didn't see that part. And people don't understand how many times this happens to women. You don't know what you're watching on that screen. Right. And at the end, he had asked me to do something and I verbally said no. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And he said, don't have a choice. And so I did it. And at that point, like I said, I'm dissociating. I don't know what to do. This was 20 years ago. Cell phones weren't, camera phones weren't a thing, the internet, I didn't know what to do. So I got picked up again right after that by 3 men. And those 3 men took me to this restaurant where I had to pretend like I was a mom out looking for a good time. And, they told me what to say, what to do. Then we went to another location. It was like a house. And, they're filming. There's a producer. And at one point, the producer was tapped me on the shoulder and was like, hey, you gotta make noise. You gotta moan, do something. I had disappeared. I was gone from the face of this earth. I was not there. And that it woke me up. And so, I complied. And then, long story short, they took me to another place. And I'm frozen. From the restaurant to that house, I couldn't speak. I couldn't say anything. And they took me to another place. That's when I started to freak out, fight, flight, freeze. I was like, I have to get out of here. And so I'm screaming. I'm like, I need somebody to take me home now. Blah, blah, blah. I found this guy. I don't even remember what he looked like, who he was. He took me to the airport, and I couldn't get a flight home. I had to wait till the next day. I got home, and I don't remember going back to the airport. I don't remember flying home. I don't remember getting home. And I actually never told my boyfriend what happened. I just told him that I wanted to come home. And so about 3 weeks later, his friend calls him and said, "Hey, who's, this name that they gave me?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, me and Jen thought it would be a good idea. But turns out it wasn't." Come to find out, I shot with the #1 adult film site in the whole world. The whole world. #1. #1. 60 billion users. A lot. The second one was right up there at the top. Like, it was like, I mean, they were both basically, this one was #1 and this one was below it. And not only were my videos on there, they plastered my pictures were on the banner. And so everyone I knew found out. I couldn't go anywhere. Didn't matter where I went. People knew who I was. I was cyberbullied. I was ostracized. I was alienated. Even my niece, she was in junior high at the time, and the junior high boys knew about it and would tease her about it. And so when I, found jiu-jitsu when I was 25, I was like completely alone. Like, I had no one on my side.
Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, the way that they dehumanized women for doing anything in the sex industry was way worse than it is now. And, for me as a young woman, it was very confusing to me, especially being neurodivergent, is I didn't understand how my boyfriend and all these men can glamorize these women that are on, in these films or these dancers, but then at the same time dehumanize them and shame them. That was very, very confusing to me.
To be fair, it's just a bunch of bullshit. I don't think that has anything to do with your neurodivergence. I just think it's bullshit.
Yeah, it is. But I was like, it was, well, yeah. And then just being young, like, I didn't understand. I'm like, I don't understand this. And so, that was 20 years ago. And then, that's why I started to do drugs. I didn't do drugs before them. I didn't even smoke cigarettes before that. I was drinking, but then, I was 25 when I found jiu-jitsu, about 3 years later. And when I get to the jiu-jitsu community, my video gets shared all over again. Everybody's talking about it. So everybody in the community knew. And then, there were just, some years would go by and it would come out again. And there's years that go by and it would come out again. And what people don't realize that they were watching is that they're watching me being sexually assaulted.
Right.
And I've had to, I never defended myself. I never said anything. I never said this is what happened. And nobody ever asked me, how did you end up there? Nobody ever took into consideration, what I went through or, and so I think a lot of people that have watched that video, because millions of people have watched them, it got to a point to where I was like, I just have to assume that everyone knows, because that's how many people have watched it. But the people that watched it, they treated me like I wasn't human. Like, I didn't deserve to be here. And even in the jiu-jitsu community, right, I was looked at like, you don't deserve to be here.
Which must have felt, sorry to interrupt, it must have felt, because jiu-jitsu for you was this lifeline back to feeling things and being in your body. So that must have been especially like a special kind of betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm making assumptions. I've not been in the sex industry, but I'm making assumptions that you would not expect people to be safe in the sex industry necessarily, or like expect a lot of human compassion and support maybe when you're a stripper or at a strip club. But when you're in this like community and environment that's about getting in touch with your body, and then for somebody to kind of weaponize that against you must be really, really, really difficult.
Yes. Yeah. It was very difficult. Then I had one of my teammates and an instructor that, I was really close friends with, for a couple of years. I was getting ready to teach a women's seminar. I was a purple belt. I've been training jiu-jitsu for 7 years. And I, like 5 minutes before I'm getting ready to teach this, one of my students, which was also his students. So, she's like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And I'm like, yeah. And so we go into another room and she's like, hey, I'm not going to blast him, but she was like, he has naked pictures of you on his phone. And he had pictures from that site on his phone.
Screenshots.
Yeah. And this is my friend, my teammate that I train and teach next to.
So this wasn't, so you like grappled or like participated in jiu-jitsu with this person and he'd had these pictures. So did you like rip all his teeth out all at once?
No, I didn't. I should have. Looking back, I should have. No, because not only did he have them on his phone, but he showed one of my students. And I'm like, she's the only one who told me. So I'm sure that he was showing every one of my students. And even after that, so that was like 5 minutes before I'm getting ready to teach this women's seminar and teach, about predators and all these things. I did it. I got onto the mat and I gave it my all. And then, as soon as that seminar was over, I broke. And that was the first time I relapsed after I'd gotten completely sober. I didn't go back to drugs, but I went and bought a bottle of tequila and a pack of cigarettes. And that was probably one of the biggest betrayals, I would say, that I had on the mat, as far as it being weaponized against me. Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't, I'm teaching all these people in class and they've seen these pictures of me and they have no idea that I was sex trafficked, and it's like, then that, these are, and I can't sit here and tell you all the things like that happened to me. But even just 2 years ago, I got a text message from a random number. This is 2 years ago, saying.
So at this point, like 20 years passed, though, right? Or close
it would be 2 years ago. It'd be about 18 years.
Right. So close to 20 years later.
Yeah, close to 20 years later. I get a text on my phone, and it's like, hey, is this Jen? And I'm like, who's this? And he's like, it's, and I'm like, who? And he says, and I was like, I don't know. And he was like, oh, well, your performance was so good the last time, we thought maybe you wanted to go on tour again or something like that. And I'm like, what's he talking about? And so I get on Facebook and I look up, I look up this name, and what pops up is one of the men who assaulted me in the video. And I never knew his name. I never knew any of their names. And so whoever this was found out, like, knew the name of this person. It was like very elaborate. And of course I'm like shocked because of seeing this guy's face. I never watched the videos. I tried to watch one time, but that I hadn't seen that man's face since I was 22 years old. And so I said something and they said something very horrible back. And I just said, I know that you're hurt and you want me to hurt, but thank you for the reminder of how far I've come, but it's like, that was just 2 years ago, and so it's like, I'm at a place
honestly,
in my life.
For you to give even that amount of compassion to another human, that like my instinct is literally like to go find that guy. You know what I mean? So like, It does, I just want to mirror back to you, because even if you can recognize it in yourself, I want you to really hear that I recognize it. That takes an incredible amount of growth to even, instead of just being like, F you, fuck you, like, screw you, don't, and just to have any sort of like calm and compassion in that situation, really does speak to a tremendous amount of mental and spiritual growth. A tremendous amount. It's not, I guarantee you, I would not, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've done all the modalities. I did all EMDR, CBT, DBT. I've done it all. So, and, jujitsu, yoga. So I have done a lot of work on myself, but I also just got to a place to where, I've accepted what happened to me. And, when I look back on that version of myself, I can see a woman who was just doing her best to survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, now when those things happen, it doesn't affect me at all at this point in my life because of the acceptance I have of the situation. But I do feel like because of the work that I'm doing, and getting into Her Haven and, taking this on such a bigger a level, I just feel like it's really important for people to understand my why. Because I've never talked about my why. People don't know. I mean, they think, they understand like I've been sexually assaulted before. But, it's, for me, it went much, much deeper than that, because to be humiliated on a global scale is something that most people don't live through.
Agreed.
Yeah. And being
Agreed.
cyberbullied and, everywhere I went, people would mock me. They would say things that they made me say in those videos out in public. They would mock me. So I'm like, and I'm the one, I was like, this was not entertainment for me. This was not pleasure for me. This was, extremely traumatizing. And just to have people repeat that to me in public all the time. And that's why when I found jiujitsu, I was done. I was ready. I was ready to go. And so, but like I said, that first jiujitsu class, it changed the trajectory of my life. And so what I've learned through all of that and using the tools of jiujitsu and the philosophies and yoga and everything that I've used to get myself here, I feel like, it's something that needs to be shared, because even though my story is very unique, as far as like, the situation and then becoming a jiu-jitsu black belt,
Right.
I feel like it can be very helpful for a lot of people, maybe to see someone else that has suffered something similar, because I know that there are a lot of people hiding in the shadows like
Absolutely.
I have been. I've been hiding myself and keeping myself in my little hidey hole in order to stay safe. And so now I'm just like, I'm going to own this story, and I'm going to, step out there and step into this role, because this is who I am and I don't want to hide it.
I don't think you fully understand just what, or maybe you do, what a powerful and impactful statement that was. And I will say, like, for me personally, it shifts something very deep in me. Even just, I've, to your point, I've not been in that situation, or anything even close to that situation, but I've also done things for people, been in relationships, done things for relationships, done things I'm not proud of because I felt scared or trapped or like I couldn't be myself or whatever. And to see you step into the story and own it with such fierceness and courage, I'm just really going to try not to lose it. It's very meaningful. So thank you for sharing that. And so I want to, that was so deep, and thank you for sharing. I just want to acknowledge that even though you've stepped so bravely into the story, it still takes emotional effort and energy to share. So thank you. Okay, and we are back. If you'll notice, I'm in a completely different spot because, I asked Jen a question, she started to give this beautiful answer, and like the internet crapped out on me. So I'm right next to my router, but I will repeat the question, and that was just around, you just shared kind of the reason for writing this book, but more now switching to like the creative writing process of the book. Because you are bringing up this, you're bringing up deep stuff. You're not writing like a rom-com or anything like that. So would love to hear about sort of your how you went about writing it, how that process went for you.
Yeah, so I tried to write it many times, and it just wasn't coming from a grounded place. I started writing it before I was ready, and
makes a lot of sense.
For me, with a lot of my creative projects, like Her Haven, for instance, I keep them in these little files, and then when I'm ready, I will sit down and it all comes out. And so I got to a place. This was about 3 years ago, I guess. I sold all my things and I packed everything I could fit into my car, and I moved down to the beach, and I just needed to get away from everything, and that's when I was inspired to sit down and finish it. And so I locked myself in a room for about 3 days and just, I'm typing on my computer and just typed, and I finished it. I'd worked on it a little bit here and there, but I also think that has to do with my ADHD too. Is I get very hyper focused on something, and so I hyper focused on it, and I'm like, I'm going to finish this.
I was about to say, this was not the I'll set aside writing time every day. No, you literally just
nope. I'm going to do this right now, and I'm not going to do anything else until it's done. And so I did, and I ended up finishing it and getting to a place that I felt good with, and so I was getting ready to publish it, and I did a pre-sale and everything, but then my best friend, she was diagnosed with cancer, and she ended up, I was going to publish it at the end of August of last year. She was diagnosed in the middle of July, and she passed August 26th. And so I became her caretaker during that time. And that kind of marked a pivotal moment in my life as well. And so I put it off because, that was heavy. And then publishing this and going out into, this big spotlight and talking about this, over and over. And, and there's going to be people that are going to not be supportive. There's going to be people that are going to continue to shame me and all this stuff. So I have to be prepared for that. And going through what I went through with Shan, I really had to take a step back and get myself back to another grounded place. And so since then, I actually did the same thing again in December. I was like, you know what? I want to get this out. I want to get it over with, because the ending had changed for me. I had to change the ending. It was different. And so I had to go back and redo the ending. But then December was when I was also starting to burn out with my gym, because I was teaching 16 hours of jiu-jitsu every week by myself, no assistant. And I was running.
And people don't realize they're like 16 hours. I work a 40-hour week, but you don't realize because I've been a yoga teacher, for in-person physical, fitness type of classes, that's an incredibly heavy workload. Most people who are any sort of movement instructors are teaching 4 or 5 classes a week, or 16 is a lot, because you have to do all the prep for it. There's a big physical and emotional and mental toll of you have to be present for your people, and before and after. It's not just 16 hours of sitting at a desk.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Answering emails.
yes. Thank you for seeing me. Yes, it is a lot, especially when you're doing 3 hours back to back, no breaks. It's just three hours of physical activity straight. There's no breaks. And and then, during the day I'm working because I'm running a business. And so I have to do other things, before that. And I have to, when I was teaching their curriculums, I knew all of them except for one. There was a new program, but I had to watch the videos. I had to study and all this stuff. And so this was December, the beginning of December. So I went through and I changed it, and I was preparing to push it out. But then once I started to realize that, what I was doing, like that, I wasn't in alignment. And I needed to take a step back and figure out, how am I going to make this sustainable for myself? And, we talked about this earlier, and I ended up leaving the university and creating Resilient Roots. And my life changed again. It's like this past year, I opened up my own business. I had to relocate because the landlord, he lied to me about the zoning. And so while my friend was sick, I had 10 days to relocate my business. And so I did. I relocated it, and then a couple of weeks later, she passes. And I moved in with them, so I caretaked for her husband for a little bit, and then I moved into my own place, and I'm running this business and doing all these things, and then I have Resilient Roots. And so I'm at a place now.
Can we just talk? Sorry
No,
again to interrupt, but I think we know where the name came from.
Yeah.
For God's sakes.
It makes sense.
Yes. Given the trajectory so far, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Resilient Roots. Yeah, it's very fitting. And somebody asked me the other day, where did you come up with that name? And I've always loved lotus flowers because I've always related to the lotus flower. You have to go through the mud.
Yes, you have to go through the mud to get
pretty
to
bloom. So now I'm really trying to stay in tune with my intuition, and being in tune with my intuition means being grounded. So when I'm in a grounded place, I can take aligned action. And so what I've learned over the years is if there is resistance, that it's not the right time. And so I am kind of waiting because now I know how my brain works. When I switched to Resilient Roots, I did that on the plane ride from Colorado to Oklahoma. I was in the airport, and my layovers, everything, writing, all the programs. I designed everything and just put it out. And, and the next day I rebranded my whole business, and it flowed and it just came out. And so, I'm kind of just waiting on that. Because I think for me, that's how I create. Because I feel like when I force creation, it becomes frustrating. And if it's frustrating for me, it's not fun and I don't want to do it. But I'm kind of just kind of waiting on the timing, on that flow. And I think I'll just know when that time is. And when it's time, I'll probably now what I'm envisioning is going and getting like an Airbnb out in the woods somewhere and just spending a whole week by myself and finishing the book. But I'm going to wait until it feels aligned and I feel ready. Yeah.
And do you think so that, on the one, somebody might look at that from the outside and go, oh, well, you changed your business literally from your layover at the airport. Mm-hmm. Does it really feel to you like it just comes suddenly, or do you think there might be something percolating behind that for whatever reason gets clarity at that moment and then comes through? Is there something, is it being worked on sort of in the background of your psyche, mind, etc.? Or does it really feel to you like, all right, this came out of nowhere? Here it is.
Yeah. No, it doesn't come out of nowhere. That's for sure. I actually, I have, I don't know how many notebooks I have, but I have stacks and stacks and stacks of notebooks because I'm constantly writing. I'm constantly writing ideas. I write poetry. I create designs and things and like Canva and stuff like that. So I'm constantly being creative, and I'm constantly writing down ideas because I have ADHD. I have all kinds of ideas all the time. But I've learned not to act on them, but I will write about them. So when it came to Resilient Roots, I had already been thinking about, because this was the beginning of February. So from like the beginning of December to February, I'd already been thinking, how am I going to sustain this? If I do, leave the academy, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to create my own. Well, I can do this and I can do that, and this freedom, and so I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh, well, I can do yoga, I can do all these things, these different things with my gym. And a wellness center is actually, I've had this idea also for probably over a decade. I've always wanted to have a wellness center. So it is something that I have been thinking about for a very, very long time. And so that's kind of how I think my creative process works is I just keep them all in these little files, and then when it's ready, it just comes out.
It just comes out.
Yeah.
Something.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I find really interesting as an artist is how inspiration works for me. So I'm always really interested in how it works for other people. Is like, do you feel like, okay, these ideas are inspired and they come from somewhere else? Do you, it also sounds like you've got a practice of, in whatever way it works for you. If you're writing all the time and creating all the time, you've got a practice of some sort. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, do you lean more on the practice, this constant practice? Do you feel inspired all the time? What is the word inspiration in your relationship with it?
I think inspiration, for me, I feel like inspiration, it hits me when I'm not trying, because that's what I was saying, like about like my book. Like if I try to force it, I'm like, okay, I got to get this done. I got to do this right now. Like that's not inspiring or motivating at all. And there's certain things that you have to do that you have to just sit down and get done. But I think when it comes to creativity and art, you want to come from an inspired place. And I think that, I think my inspiration comes from being in motion. But like when I'm teaching Jiujitsu, or I'm, doing pole, or I'm doing yoga, or I'm meditating, or I'm writing poetry. Like I feel like that is what where my inspiration comes from, is the doing things that I love, right, that I enjoy. So, I might, because if I'm stagnant, the inspiration's not just going to pop up. But I do feel like my inspiration comes from staying in motion and continuing to do things that that bring me joy.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I've got one more question. I've been asking everybody this because I'm specifically talking to people sort of in the middle point of their life, because I'm in the middle point of my life, and I, at this perspective, your mental, emotional perspective has changed. You've got some experience. Your body is changing, or has changed, or will change. And especially for women, as you have talked about so eloquently, we've been given a ton of messages over the years, bombarded with messages, oftentimes externally. And so I'm just wondering, what is your favorite, or what is the like garbage piece of advice that sticks out to you? I was telling somebody, like, I could ask for what the best advice is, but that'll kind of be like the next question, kind of. Yeah. I'll kind of throw it back to that. But like, I just think, because I think all women have something like that sticks out, that like, this is the thing that I was like, shut up.
I can think of a lot. Like, I mean, I could send you a list probably of
Right.
50 that I could think of. But you're saying garbage advice, right? Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be right now, like where I'm at in my life is, what is it? Don't stop when you're tired, stop when you're done.
You're right. That's awful. You're right. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's worse. It's like, it's that, like, that hustle culture. It's like, no, go ahead and, run yourself into a wall, run yourself into burnout, make yourself sick, make yourself terrible to be around until it's done. And it's like this, and like you're saying, as we're getting older and our bodies are changing and everything, like, I'm finding that prioritizing my rest and my stillness and slowing down actually makes me more productive.
Amen.
Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt. Amen.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yes. And, we're operating from that system of, no rest for the wicked, or, don't stop until you're done. It's not good for our health. And you're for me personally, I don't perform well like that.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah.
And then and this will be the last question, and then we'll sign off. And I have to say, Jen, this has been, I mean, we're going at like an hour 20, and with good reason. Your story is so compelling, and I just really appreciate the honesty and eloquence that you've brought to this conversation. If you were to, if somebody, maybe they're interested in Her Haven and they're not sure, maybe they haven't done jiu-jitsu or yoga or movement before, maybe they are in a position that you have been in where they have felt silence or disconnected. What is something that you would want to share with that person?
I think, well, Her Haven, the techniques and things that we do there, they are coming from a more of a nervous system regulation place, right? So we're slowing everything down, so it's not scary. But if, to someone that was getting ready to try jujitsu or yoga for the first time, I would just tell them, let it be messy, let it be chaotic. And, we all start at the exact same place. We all, look silly when we first start. That's just part of it. And your instructor knows that. We know that. We know that you're not going to have it perfect. And when we're learning any kind of technique of any kind, like a jujitsu technique, for instance, to get 100% of those details the first time that you learn it is not realistic. So when you go in, same thing with yoga, you go in and you learn a pose or you learn a technique, you're going to take 30% of those details with you out the door. And then you're going to go to work and you're going to take your kids to school and you're going to sleep, and then you're going to lose 10% of the details that you took with you. So when you come back to class, you have 20% of those details. And then you see that technique again. Well, now, because you've seen it again, you just added 40% on top of that. So now you have 70% of the details to make that technique smooth and flowy, like we were talking about before. And then the third time through, then you can come back and it's, 99, 95, 100%. And so, no one starts flowing out. No one starts learning the techniques perfectly the first time through. It's all about consistency and just showing up. And that's really all that it takes. But you have to be willing to be a beginner, for one. That's hard for people. And in jiu-jitsu, you have to be okay with being defeated over and over and over again, because there will come a time where you're no longer being defeated, and all the positions in Jiu-Jitsu that are very uncomfortable, especially for trauma survivors. They are very uncomfortable. They're very triggering in the beginning, but it's like exposure therapy. The more and more you do it, those positions eventually turn into places of power. So when we can turn, us being on our backs with someone in between our legs, that's called the guard in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
And when you get very comfortable with that position, and you learn how to survive, and you learn how to choke someone unconscious from there in 10, 15 seconds, that becomes a place of power. And not only does it become a place of power, but you start being comfortable in these positions. You're comfortable with somebody being on top of you. You're comfortable with somebody putting weight on you and smashing you. So there is this confidence that starts to build in you, knowing that when you get attacked, that you're not going to be caught off guard, because that's going to be familiar to you. Oh, I've had somebody put their hand on my face before, right? It's not normal. It's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning, but it does get easier, and you just have to keep showing up, because I've seen it happen over and over again. So it doesn't matter your size, your age, your weight, or where you are in life. Everybody's jiu-jitsu and everybody's yoga is going to look completely different. And this kind of goes back to being different. We want to create our own. We get to create our own jiu-jitsu. We get to create our own yoga and modify it to ourselves. So to new people, I would just say let it be messy and let it be chaotic, because one day it won't be.
I love it. I love it. Jenn, thank you so much for joining us. What the actual Jenn on Instagram, Jenn with 2 N's.
Yes.
Jenn, hang on, but we're going to say goodbye to everybody else who might be listening for now. And thank you so much.
Thank you.